The Elytra in Minecraft is a very useful item that lets you fly endlessly with rockets around your world. But what if I told you they have some massive flaws that negatively affect the game and the community far more than you realize? Okay, you might think I'm being crazy and dramatic, but hear me out. The Elytra, but more so its implementation of the items and features related to it, have created this ripple effect, which has changed the way players build and treat infrastructure for travel in their world, and also inadvertently led to the despise of what could have been one of the most beloved mobs in the game. Now, this is all going to be my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me down in the comments if you think my opinion is stupid and that you hate me for it. I don't hate Elytra now in the modern game, but I think the way it's implemented is not the best when it comes to game design. And if you've ever had trouble building in modern, or you feel like your world is empty for some reason, maybe this is part of it. I'm going to start by going through the different forms of transportation in Minecraft, to give some context and backstory leading up to the addition of the Elytra. There are 4 major forms of transportation: walking and sprinting, minecarts, horses, and Elytra. I think Minecraft used to quietly encourage building, more specifically building infrastructure. Back in alpha and beta there was no sprinting, so minecarts were added as a fast and useful mode of transport, at the cost of a lot of resources and time from the player. You would put the effort into building a rail to save you time and travelling later. And because the process was slower, I think you were far more likely to take care in the building of the rail. Train stations, tunnels, bridges, building with rails meant an opportunity to build something cool in your world, that looked good while you were on the rail, or looking at it from a distance. And it was something that could always be expanding in your world. I think an apt comparison is animation studios. Back in the day when every single frame of an animated movie was hand-drawn, studios weren't going to put all that manual effort into a movie that didn't have a good story or voice acting, meaning that all the aspects of the movie ended up with loads of thought, detail, and care put into them. These days, animation has come a long way, and movies can be pumped out much quicker, meaning the time taken to sit with a character design or the plot of the movie isn't as heavily weighted. And that's why we have classics that stand the test of time, while some modern movies are completely forgettable. I think this resonates with my feelings on rails. When you spend more time building a rail or using a rail you've made, you're going to spend more time imagining how it could be better. But if you lay it down as a one-time thing, you're not going to put the same effort and care into it, and it ends up feeling empty when you come back to it. Now, sprinting was added at the cost of food, encouraging you to have a solid infrastructure of farms for food. The power of minecarts wasn't totally diminished either. The longer you had to travel or the more treacherous the terrain, the more viable building railway infrastructure was. Horses, on the other hand, shook this trend a little bit, as they were faster and could traverse most terrain aside from water, with no real expense so long as you had a saddle. Horses could still encourage a player to build infrastructure in their world though, even though it might replace minecart infrastructure. Stables to store them in, pathways to travel easier along with signposts, and bridges to traverse water. And now we finally come to the Elytra that was added in 1.9. They're a set of wings which, when they were originally added, were supposed to act like a glider, allowing players to fly for a time until they met the ground. Great, now you can traverse your world in a whole new way, and build brand new kinds of infrastructure for the endgame item. Towers that you can climb and allow you to jump off and fly in all directions. Maybe even chain them in a line so that you can glide from one to the next. All at the cost of beating the end, conquering the end city at least once, and then finally, the durability of the item itself. They don't even break entirely when used though, and originally leather was used to repair them, which wasn't very hard to get. But later in 1.13 they added the Phantom mob, which when killed would drop membranes, that would now replace leather and make for a more balanced cost to repair the wings, which now came at a cost of having to brave the dangers of the night, multiple nights in a row, or have enough solid infrastructure in place where you have a safe haven to fight. Finally, the Phantom shows up, and they're always a challenge, testing your skill with a bow and your reflexes in combat. But you are rewarded for your efforts each night you don't sleep. The ability to repair your beloved wings is just great game design. But hold on, there's an issue here. No one builds infrastructure for Elytra travel. No one goes more than 3 nights without sleeping. And no one fights this dangerous mob or even likes it at all. Why? There are 2 problems with how things actually turned out. One affects how we build infrastructure and use transport in the game, and the other affects the fundamental gameplay in all areas of the game. Now the first one I want to talk about is rocket propulsion, introduced in 1.11.1. The only reason this came about was because of a bug that was found, whereby using a punch bow, you could shoot yourself in just the right way to keep yourself in the air indefinitely. Once this was discovered, the community saw new heights and potential for this item. Before, players were excited and content with the new transport method and its glider abilities. Now they demanded the ability for infinite flight should stay a feature of the game. Now this does sound fun, and it is kind of fun. Having to master the skill of shooting a bow at yourself to stay in flight is at least interesting. And coming at the cost of food, armor durability, bow durability, and arrows, it seems like a pretty good trade-off. But it was a bug that was threatened to be removed, and infinite flight was demanded. And eventually it was added without a full realization of the consequences for such an overpowered item. So not long after, Mojang added rocket power flight, meaning you could fly infinitely. So at the cost of paper and gunpowder, which are both easily farmable. This no longer gave any player a reason to build the transport and travel infrastructure we imagined earlier. But at least the item was still capped on durability for travel, and it was still balanced out by making you never skip a night so that you had to constantly fight for phantom membranes, right? Well, next is what I think is one of the most controversial additions that people really gloss over. Mending. Mending affects the game tremendously, and people don't even realize. If we look at the Elytra, adding mending changes the whole balance of the item. Now instead of having to build up the infrastructure at night to fight phantoms, every single time you need to repair the most powerful item in the game, all you need now is a simple XP farm. Which realistically, an Enderman grinder would fall under that category. And we all know how fast they are. Or you can at least have a villager in a hole somewhere to trade bottles of enchanting. Now maybe it's just me, but those two things are not equal. Fighting phantoms every night and chucking a bit of XP on yourself, not very equal. Now there's no reason at all to fight the phantom, and they've become more of an annoyance for people who forget to sleep, rather than a sought after mob that encourages you not to sleep. Mending paired with rocket power flight both diminish the player's potential creativity in building infrastructure in their world to accommodate different transport methods, as well as diminishes the fundamental gameplay loop required to instill power and value in the best items in the game. Mending especially doesn't only affect the Elytra. Armor and tools as well, for example, are affected. In the same way that giving yourself multiple building tasks to work on keeps you engaged in the game and prevents burnout, so does the inbuilt feature of having to collect resources and re-gear up. Plus you'll be using mechanics such as villager trading, which is a whole other mess, and even enchanting at the enchantment table, more than just once. If we could go back to the bow boosting bug from earlier, without mending, that method of flight could have been a good compromise to keep in the game. You're rewarded for your skill and preparation with a punch bow, allowing you to travel further, but the trade-off is that you lose durability on your items faster, which without mending, you would have to keep repairing with valuable resources you gather, and eventually replace things like your armor and bow entirely. Maybe you would wear specific armor for flight to save on resources, and enchant your armor with projectile protection. Or maybe this would once again encourage the building of Elytra towers. This way the player gets a choice, and has to weigh the pros and cons of each flight. But with rockets, all you need is a sugarcane farm, and a creeper farm, which again are not too difficult to accomplish early game, let alone late game. The Elytra as it is makes obsolete all other forms of transport, and in turn renders the creativity spawned out of necessity for building infrastructure null and void. But it could be an item that complements the other forms of transport, each having their place where they fit in, their benefits, their drawbacks, to keep them all in balance. Now although you still technically can bow boost, it's much harder than it used to be. But if you want something you can take away from this video, I would encourage you to give the Elytra a try as they were intended to be. Gliders. Try ditching mending and restore the proper gameplay loop of the game, where you can engage with the features that you might have even thought were annoying, and restore the notion that if you put the effort in, it will equate to the rewards you get out, rather than just being handed the infinite beneficial reward. Now I understand this type of playing isn't right for everyone. Some people just like to build whatever they want without limits, which to me kind of feels like creative mode, but I can understand that. But for me, building in Minecraft is fun not only when you just build whatever you want whenever you want, but it's also satisfying when I build almost out of necessity, something that will make my gameplay simpler and quicker. And this isn't only limited to transport. To me, this is redstone as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video of my little opinion on Elytras, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Laters.